throwaway account for obvious reasons. I, female, 32, am a trauma surgeon, and I am seriously at the end of my rope with my family right now. So my Aunt Eleanor passed away about 3 months ago from progressive supranuclear palsy. It's this really awful brain disorder. I spent the last 14 months basically living at her house and taking care of her whenever I wasn't at the hospital working, which as a trauma surgeon is already a lot of hours. It was exhausting and heartbreaking, but she was worth it. Some background. My aunt was a neurologist back in the 70s when women in medicine were rare. She never got married or had kids, but she was always involved with us nieces and nephews. I basically grew up wanting to be exactly like her. I ended up in trauma instead of neurology, but still followed her into medicine. My mom and I never really bonded when I was growing up. She was always working, and I guess I just gravitated toward Aunt Eleanor instead. Eleanor was she got me, you know. Anyway, I'm still living out of boxes in my apartment because I spent so much time at Eleanor's Victorian house during her illness that I basically moved in. I've been Eleanor's medical proxy and primary caregiver through everything. The diagnosis, the decline, all of it. So 3 months ago, she passed away, and last month was the will reading. This is where everything went to absolute shit. Eleanor named me as her executor and left me her Victorian home. It's worth like $1.5 million in this market. And this historical jewelry collection that's been passed down through the women in our family for generations. The will said that the jewelry collection needs to stay intact and go to me as the female heir who followed in Eleanor's medical footsteps. My cousin Michael, male, 45, absolutely lost it at the reading. He was red-faced, screaming about how his daughters Emma, 17, and Lily, 15, deserve equal shares of the jewelry. I was honestly shocked because Michael always seemed to be Eleanor's favorite at family gatherings. His family is like the perfect branch that everyone fawns over. While my parents divorced when I was 12 and I was always kind of, the quiet one, I guess. I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that felt weirdly vindicated that Eleanor left this stuff to Emmy after years of feeling overlooked at family events where Michael's louder personality always seemed to get all the attention. Is that horrible? Probably. Okay, so here's what happened at the will reading. The lawyer reads out that I get the house and jewelry collection. I'm sitting there kind of in shock because even though Eleanor and I had talked about the jewelry before, I didn't expect to get everything. I glance over at Michael and his face is turning really red. His wife is squeezing his arm super hard. As soon as the lawyer finishes, Michael jumps up and starts yelling. He accused me of manipulating Eleanor when she was vulnerable and taking advantage of a sick old woman. I was so shocked I could barely respond. Like, excuse me. I gave up everything to care for her. I was changing her diapers at 3 a.m. between hospital shifts while he was visiting once a month for an hour. I know it's petty, but I literally kept a mental tally of how often everyone visited her. Michael came maybe once every 3 to 4 weeks for like an hour max. I was there every single day for over a year, and yet I still feel guilty for even thinking this way. I finally told him that I put my entire life on hold to care for her and gave up a research position that would have advanced my career while asking when he was ever there for her. He then claimed he'd been handling all of Eleanor's finances for years and that her previous will had specified a different distribution, which I didn't know about, to be honest. Then he stormed out saying this wasn't over, which was actually pretty scary in the moment. Here's where I'm really struggling. There were definitely times during Eleanor's illness where she seemed confused, and we did spend a lot of evenings talking about family history and the jewelry collection when she was sick. Did I somehow influence her without meaning to? I don't think so, but now I'm second-guessing everything. And I can't stop thinking about Michael's comment about managing her finances. Was he actually closer to her than I realized? Did she change her mind about the jewelry at some point and forget to tell me? But then I remember how specific the will was about keeping the collection intact and going to the female heir who followed in Eleanor's medical footsteps. That's clearly me, right? Not Michael's teenage daughters who haven't even started college yet. I haven't let anyone see the jewelry collection since the funeral because I'm worried about something happening to it or Michael taking pieces, which makes me sound paranoid, but I swear it's about respecting Eleanor's wishes. Right now, my apartment is a disaster. Half-unpacked boxes everywhere. My poor succulents nearly died while I was at Eleanor's, and I've been stress cleaning at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. Oh, and Michael mentioned he wants a family meeting to work things out, but I found out he's already talking to a lawyer, so that feels sketchy. Am I being unreasonable here? Should I just split up the collection to keep the peace? But that would literally go against Eleanor's explicit wishes in the will. And honestly, I really don't want to. Is that selfish? Edit. A lot of people are asking about the jewelry value. Honestly, I don't even know exactly. Some pieces are from the early 1900s, and there are a few Victorian-era pieces. I'm not a jewelry expert, but Eleanor always said the sentimental value was more important than the money. But yeah, Michael wouldn't be this upset if it wasn't worth something significant. To those asking if I have documentation of Eleanor's mental state during the will change, yes, I made sure her neurologist documented her cognitive status. She had physical decline, but her mind was still sharp when the will was updated about 8 months before she died. The confusion episodes came later. Edit 2. Several people have mentioned getting a safe deposit box for the jewelry. That's actually a really good idea, thanks. And yes, I've changed the locks on the Victorian house already. Now for the first update. Update to my last post about the inheritance drama with my cousin. So it's been about a month since I wrote about the whole mess with my Aunt Eleanor's will, and things have gotten even worse. First off, I finally agreed to meet with my cousin Michael and his wife Diane at a coffee shop downtown. I really thought maybe we could work things out like adults. I don't know what I was thinking, honestly. I've been taking extra hospital shifts lately, just so I don't have to be alone with my thoughts in my apartment, which still has boxes everywhere. I'm so exhausted all the time that I literally fell asleep standing up in the elevator at work yesterday. Not my proudest moment. Anyway, I brought Eleanor's medical files to show Michael that she was mentally competent when she updated her will. I thought maybe if he saw the neurologist's notes confirming her cognitive function was intact during that period, he might back off a bit. I know some of you commented saying I shouldn't need to prove anything since the will is legal, but I really just wanted to resolve this without lawyers if possible. So I get to the coffee shop, and Michael and Diane are already there with this older guy I've never seen before. Michael introduces him as an old family friend who knows about medical matters, which immediately seemed weird to me because I've literally never heard of this person before, and I've known Michael my entire life. I noticed this guy is taking notes while I'm explaining Eleanor's medical status, and something just felt off. So I finally asked what his profession was, and Michael got all shifty and eventually admitted Peterson is his attorney. His attorney. At what was supposed to be an informal family meeting to work things out. I felt completely ambushed and tried to leave, but Michael blocked my exit. He kept insisting we needed to discuss his investment in Eleanor's estate. That's when he told me that he'd been managing Eleanor's investments for years and claims he's the one who grew her estate considerably. Then he told me that Eleanor invested $150,000 in his business 5 years ago. But when I pressed him on it, he got super defensive, and his story kept changing. First, it was an investment. Then it was a loan that he'd been paying back in dividends. Something about the way he was explaining it just seemed shady, like he was making it up as he went along. I asked to see the paperwork for this arrangement, and he got really cagey about it, said he'd bring it to the next meeting. Yeah, right. The whole conversation got worse from there. His lawyer kept making comments about grounds to challenge the will's validity, and I just lost it. I told them both that if they wanted to communicate with me further, they could do it through my lawyer. When I got home, I was so upset I could barely function. I ended up cleaning my bathroom at 2 a.m. Who does that? Me, apparently. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, when I was going through Eleanor's home office last weekend, I found that several pages from her financial records are missing, specifically from the months right before I moved in to care for her. What a weird coincidence that those particular pages would disappear, right? And yes, that was sarcasm. I've been having trouble sleeping, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but one night last week when I couldn't sleep, I took out the jewelry collection and tried all the pieces on. I don't even really like jewelry that much. I've never been a jewelry person, but wearing Eleanor's antique necklaces and bracelets made me feel confused. Eleanor was always so emotionally distant with me, like she approved of my achievements but never really connected with me, you know. I also adopted Eleanor's cat, Milo. He's 16 and hates everyone except me. Apparently, he hisses at the delivery guy who brings my groceries. Kind of how I feel about people lately, to be honest. Last week I got into a fender bender because I was so distracted thinking about all this inheritance drama. Just a minor thing in the hospital parking lot, but still. And I canceled my dating app subscription because who has mental space for dating during all this? Which sucks because I'd been messaging with this pediatric surgeon who seemed actually decent. But here's the thing that's been keeping me up at night. While organizing Eleanor's home office, I found this half-written letter. It was addressed to Michael's daughters, Emma and Lily, and it mentioned promising them significant pieces of the family jewelry collection. The letter is dated after she signed the new will, but during her illness. I haven't shown this to anyone. I keep telling myself it must have been written during one of her confused periods, but honestly, I have no proof of that. It's just easier to believe that than to question everything. And when I really look at the jewelry collection closely, there are several pieces that have connections to Michael's side of the family, like this pearl brooch that has his mother's initials engraved on the back. Why would Eleanor leave that to me instead of to Michael's daughters? It doesn't make sense. This all reminds me of my college roommate Jen, who went through something similar with her brother. They haven't spoken in 8 years over some disputed family jewelry. I never thought I'd be in this position. To make things even worse, Michael's daughter Emma, the 17-year-old, has been posting on social media about how I'm stealing their inheritance. So now extended family members and even some family friends are taking sides. I've had to block like half my relatives on Facebook this week. It's exhausting. My mom called me yesterday and suggested I should just share the collection to keep the peace. Then she made this comment about how she always thought Eleanor favored me unfairly anyway, which is wild to me because I always felt the opposite. Like Eleanor was always fawning over Michael and his perfect family at every gathering. The more I dig into Eleanor's things, the more complicated this gets. I found out that Eleanor had been paying for Michael's daughter's private school tuition for years. Meanwhile, when I asked if she could help with my med school loans back when I graduated, she told me it was important to stand on my own 2 feet. So that was a fun discovery. And when I was packing up her house, I found these detailed photo albums full of pictures of Michael's family. Vacations, birthdays, graduations, everything. There were only a few scattered photos of me, mostly just at formal family gatherings. That hurt more than I expected it to. I know it might sound like I'm being vindictive by not wanting to share the jewelry, but it's more complicated than that. It's about honoring what Eleanor clearly stated in her will, and maybe also about finally feeling chosen by her, even if it was only at the end. Edit. To answer everyone asking about getting a lawyer, yes, I'm meeting with one tomorrow. I probably should have done this weeks ago. Edit 2. Some people asked about the coffee shop confrontation details. Here's exactly how it went down. I sat down and immediately Michael introduced Peterson. I explained Eleanor's medical status and Peterson started taking notes. I asked what his profession was and Michael hemmed and hawed. Finally, Michael admitted Peterson was his attorney, just for clarity. I said something like, "So you ambushed me with legal representation." I tried to leave, but Michael moved to block me. He started going on about his investment in Eleanor's business. I demanded to see documentation about the missing financial pages. He deflected by bringing up the private school tuition payments. I said something sarcastic like, "Oh, so paying for your kids' education means you get the jewelry too." That's when Peterson started talking about grounds to challenge the will. Now for the second update on the inheritance drama. I found something huge in Eleanor's papers. First, thank you to everyone who told me to get a lawyer as soon as possible. I ended up consulting with 3 different estate attorneys. They all basically said the same thing. The will is legally solid. Eleanor was documented as mentally competent when she signed it, but that doesn't mean Michael can't drag me through expensive litigation just to be petty. One attorney told me I'll win, but might go broke doing it. I decided to sell Eleanor's Victorian house. I know, a lot of you told me I should keep it as an investment or whatever, but I just couldn't. Living there felt awful. Every time I walked through the door, I'd remember Michael screaming at me during the will reading. And honestly, the maintenance costs were insane. So I'm in this apartment now. There are still boxes everywhere, because apparently I'm incapable of unpacking like a normal human being. My cat Milo hates it here and keeps trying to escape through the bathroom window. My department at the hospital has been pushing me to apply for this head trauma surgeon position that's opening up next year. I've had the application half finished on my laptop for like 2 months now. Every time I sit down to work on it, I end up thinking about the inheritance problems instead. My concentration is completely shot. I've never been like this before. I used to be able to focus through anything. Now I'm like, who even am I anymore? About a month ago, I tried to compromise with Michael. I offered to give Emma and Lily some select pieces from the collection when they turned 25, which seemed reasonable to me. They're teenagers now, why would they need antique jewelry? I specifically picked out pieces that had connections to their grandmother, Eleanor's sister. I'd keep the most valuable pieces, which felt fair since Eleanor literally left them to me in her will. You guys, Michael got really angry. He said he would demand a full investigation into Eleanor's mental capacity and my involvement in changing the will. He accused me of manipulating a sick old woman and said he had witnesses who would testify about Eleanor's mental state. What witnesses? I was the one taking care of her 24/7. While packing up Eleanor's house to sell it, I found something I wasn't expecting. Dozens of journals. Eleanor had been keeping diaries for decades. I spent like 3 straight nights reading through them. They revealed this really complex relationship with Michael. She loved him deeply, but she also didn't trust his financial decisions at all. There were multiple entries about him asking her for money for these business ventures that never seemed to pan out. The most painful part, though, I'm barely mentioned in the diaries. When I do appear, it's mostly just notes about my academic achievements. Catherine got into medical school. Catherine graduated with honors. Nothing about our actual relationship or emotional connection. That hurt more than I care to admit. Something really scary happened at work last week. I was operating on this elderly female patient who reminded me so much of Eleanor. Same silver gray hair, same nose shape. I literally had to step out of the OR for 5 minutes to pull myself together. I've never done that before in my entire career. My attending was super understanding, but I was absolutely mortified. I did something kind of stupid a few weeks ago. I called Michael and implied I had medical evidence that could call into question Eleanor's competence during the years he was handling her finances. Total bluff, but you should have heard how quickly his tone changed. He went from aggressive to nervous in like 2 seconds flat, which made me wonder what he was hiding. I overheard some colleagues at lunch the other day talking about inheritance disputes in their own families, and I had this horrible moment where I thought, is that how people see me? Am I the greedy relative everyone gossips about? That made me doubt myself. Am I just being selfish about this jewelry collection? But then I remind myself that I was the one who actually cared for her when she was sick and dying. Where was Michael then? Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. While going through Eleanor's financial records, I found evidence that Michael had pressured Eleanor to invest $200,000 in his business venture just 2 months before her diagnosis. And guess what? That investment resulted in major losses that he never told her about. I found journal entries where she wrote about feeling like Michael only saw her as a walking checkbook rather than a beloved aunt. There was this one entry. Sometimes I wonder if Michael would still visit if I didn't have money to give him. So I finally decided to confront Michael with what I found. I invited him to meet at my lawyer's office to settle things once and for all. He showed up looking all smug and confident, even made this comment about me finally being reasonable. And, coming to my senses, I let him talk for a bit while my lawyer just sat there silently. Then I slid a folder across the table containing Eleanor's investment statements and copies of the relevant diary entries. You guys should have seen his face change as he flipped through those pages. I calmly asked him why Eleanor's $200,000 investment was only recorded as $50,000 in her financial statements. Where did the other $150 go? He started stuttering about standard business losses that Eleanor fully understood. So I pulled out the diary entry where she explicitly wrote about feeling pressured to invest more than she was comfortable with. Michael tried to dismiss the diaries as the confused writings of a sick old woman. Ironic considering his earlier arguments about the will, right? That's when my lawyer mentioned he'd already spoken with Michael's former business partner. Michael literally slumped in his chair. He finally admitted he had borrowed from the investment to cover other business debts. And get this, he had been doing this for years, taking money from Eleanor, losing it, hiding the losses, then coming back for more. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little satisfaction watching him get caught. Is that awful of me? Probably. But after months of being accused of manipulating Eleanor, it felt good to have proof I was right. Something unexpected happened last month, too. Emma, Michael's 17-year-old daughter, came to see me without her parents knowing. She told me the specific jewelry pieces she wanted were ones her grandmother had shown her years ago. She had all these childhood memories associated with them that I had no idea about. Seeing myself in her ambition and love for these family pieces made me briefly consider just giving her the pieces. But then I remembered all the social media posts she made about me stealing their inheritance, and I just couldn't. After a lot of thinking and an embarrassing amount of late-night crying, I've realized my own motivations were more complicated than just honoring Eleanor's wishes. I wanted validation that Eleanor valued me more than Michael. I wanted proof that our relationship meant something to her. But the diaries didn't give me that, at all. I ultimately decided to keep the most valuable pieces, but loaned several items to a medical history museum in Eleanor's name. This way, neither I nor Michael's family can easily access them, but I maintain legal ownership. The museum was thrilled to create an exhibit about pioneering women in medicine, featuring Eleanor's story and her jewelry. After I confronted Michael with evidence of his financial manipulation, he dropped all his legal threats, but he's completely cut me off from all family events and information. My mom told me he instructed everyone not to mention my name at family gatherings. It's like I don't exist anymore. Emma, who's now taking pre-med courses, occasionally emails me about her studies. She'll ask questions about medical school applications or what classes to take. I sometimes send her medical textbooks, but haven't offered any jewelry pieces. Michael apparently hates that she contacts me, but can't really stop her, since she's basically an adult now. Last month, I attended this big medical conference and wore Eleanor's signature emerald necklace. An elderly colleague of hers actually mistook me for Eleanor from across the room. When he realized his mistake, he told me, "For a moment, I thought Eleanor was back with us. You have her presence." I literally had to lock myself in a bathroom stall for 10 minutes after that conversation. I've become responsible for Eleanor's legacy, but at what cost? The family connections that Eleanor valued most are permanently damaged. The jewelry collection stays intact, but mostly locked in a safe deposit box. I won the battle, but honestly, it feels increasingly empty as the family split becomes permanent. But sometimes, when I'm having a particularly rough day at the hospital, I'll think about how I exposed Michael's financial exploitation of our aunt, and I can't help but feel Eleanor would have approved. At least, that's what I tell myself. Edit. So many of you are asking if I reported Michael's financial misconduct to authorities. No, I didn't. The statute of limitations had expired on some of it, and pursuing legal action would have meant dragging Eleanor's name and reputation through a very public mess. She wouldn't have wanted that. Edit 2. To answer the people asking about the total value of the jewelry collection, it was appraised at around $380,000. The most valuable piece is a Victorian-era emerald and diamond necklace worth about $85,000 alone.